Hello, my name is Rick. This is the Dwarf Fortress of Swampcavern. I've had a few people tell me they'd like to see a Let's Play of Swampcavern, and well, you're going to get your wish. This is a very special episode. This is episode 1 of the Mushroom Park expansion project. When I started playing this fort, I mostly had one goal in mind: have a breeding family of giant tigers. I achieved that goal last summer. I wanted a new project, something that would keep me interested in playing this fort a little longer. My first thought was a park with a water project, like fountains and a river and a water feature such as a central lake. Then I remembered that I had only just clawed this fort back from being unplayable due to running too slowly. I had it pointed out that my idea for a fountain was more like a random trickle device. It wouldn't be properly fountain-y. So I came up with a different plan. It's rather ambitious, but it's meant to keep me busy for a while. The Mushroom Park expansion is going to be 45 blocks long, 36 blocks wide, and 19 dwarf stories tall. The bottom of it is filled with giant mushroom trees, because everyone loves mushrooms. There's a platform on one end that rises up and serves as a meeting hall and viewing area for the park. In the middle of the room is a vast arched bridge with its middle missing. On the peaks of either side of the bridge is a large specimen mushroom tree. On the last third of the room, there's a second platform at the same height as the bridge, with more mushrooms growing on it. If that doesn't sound easy to visualize, here's an artist's rendering of what it will hopefully look like. Part of the idea is that every wall of every layer will be smoothed and engraved with an event that happened in the fort. This is a large project, and growing mushrooms right where I want them to be means a large water project on top of digging out this huge space. The water project part is going to be tough on the frames per second, a measure of how quickly the game is running. So I really have 3 objectives right now. One is build this park. 2 is build up the dwarven population a little. Swampcavern is the last holdout of dwarves in the world they live in, and they've lost a few along the way. I turned up the population cap, so hopefully they will have some more kids. The third objective is to make the game run faster. I have several approaches I can take to achieve this, and I intend to do them all. First, I can lower the number of creatures that are not dwarves or humans. We have a bunch of spare giant cave spiders and war cats that are just more than needed. Also, I can go around deleting items from this world as I see them. And I can seal off unused parts of the fort so that no one can even think about going there. I can chop down trees in the mushroom layers and pave over them so they can't grow back. I can do this on the surface as well. My plan is to do a little of both. If I pave over an area of mushroom level the same size as the park won't really be hurting the frames per second. It will break even. If I pave over more than that, I'll get ahead. In this episode, I'm going to talk about how I do large building projects. Then I will talk briefly about the history of the Fortress of Swampcavern and the world it lives in, for the people who are new to this channel, and to let the fans catch up a bit. Megaprojects. Whether it's Dwarf Fortress or Minecraft, if I'm working on something big and complicated enough, I like to draw it out on graph paper first. It's just faster. Here's the overhead view looking down on the mushroom expansion project. Here's the platform on one end. Down here, the dwarves will sit here to look out over the park. Here's the bridge. This will be the missing part in the middle here. This will be the part the mushrooms sit on. And here's the platform at the other end. To help get the complicated shape of the arched bridge right, I drew a side view of it. I like designing on paper first because it's quick to make changes. It's easier to do it that way than to try it in-game. My first plan was to make the bridge flat, but then I thought a nice curve and arch would look cooler. Next, I find a place where I want to build this project in the world. It's important that the area is explored enough that you can make your project without caves or the landscape getting in the way. There's nothing like designating a big plan and digging out some of it, only to find out that there's a cave where you wanted your fort to be. Then I lay out the project in marking mode. Once I have the area laid out, I can figure out how to connect water to it or from it if that's part of the project. In this case, I need to bring water to the park to create mud where I want mushrooms to grow. I don't need to drain it away, as I need to leave the mud behind. I don't need to drain it away, as I need it to leave the mud behind. I recommend making a water project as simple and direct as possible. For instance, the waterfall that runs through Swampcavern. It connects to the river here, runs only a short distance to the fort. It then falls through several hallways before falling into the tavern. Then it takes a short direct path off screen. But in the case of this project, that's just not possible. There are cave layers in the way. There's not any conveniently located water in the cave, so it's going to have to come all the way from the surface. Figuring out how to get water so far down underground was quite a challenge. To make it easier, I started from both ends. I looked at what was above the project to find a way towards the surface. Then I started from the surface, here, and began working my way down. From there, I figured out a path that eventually met up in the middle. I took a route that was as short and non-janky as I could make it, but even still, it's going to go straight through a disused stockpile that I'm going to have to wall off. Here, I am about to start going down levels to show you what I'm talking about. Going down and down and down. Misses a hallway, misses a different hallway. Oh, right there. Have to build a wall there. Once everything is designated and laid out, you still have to figure out ways to connect the fort you have with the places you need built. I have not done that yet. When that's done, you can start the construction part of the project. I usually turn on a few parts of it at a time and then let them get built before giving more orders. When it comes to simple mining, you can just turn the marked areas from designate only to mine. When it comes to excavating large areas, I do that from the top down, one level at a time. I do that as an additional safety measure. Here's why. Safety is a factor. For instance, digging out large areas creates a chance for cave-ins. If even one part of a cave floor gets broken off and falls from digging, nearby miners will get knocked out, hurt, even possibly killed. When you're digging out a large area, having solid stone there makes it a lot less micromanaging to do. I like to use the marker-only tool for planning builds. That way, if I unpause the game while designing, the dwarves won't run off and start digging up an area that is still in the design phase. I also use this marking designation as a way of checking my work as I go. These blue designations are to mine, but I'm going to channel this layer, not mine it. When it comes to ordering them to dig this part, I will go in and give the channel order one layer at a time, only when ready. I'm not changing this from marking designation to dig designation. The reason I do it this way is to prevent mistakes and make sure I really know what I'm doing each step, each level along the way. For instance, if you did this by telling it to channel, then changing the designation from marker to channeling, you might make a mistake like telling them to do 2 levels or more at once. The dwarves would happily start channeling out all the levels at the same time in a way that could create cave-ins. Also, when doing plumbing projects, whether with water or magma, doing second, third, and fourth checks that everything is lined up vertically is a good idea. For instance, channeling out a large room through these mines would be annoying, because you'd have to be more careful around the parts that are already mined out. Channeling out a large room through these well-mined marble levels would be a huge pain, because you'd have a choice of either being careful about every square you dug out, or basically guarantee some cave-ins sooner or later. Here's a good example of an already completed mega project, the Tavern. It's both a building project and a water project. The tavern is 10 stories tall. It has 2 levels of taverns that look out into this space. It has statues with water falling on their heads. It is, in effect, a large custom-built mushroom farm, except this time the mushrooms are to be looked at, not chopped down. Here are the different levels of the tavern. Here's the lowest level of it, with chairs and tables for people to sit at. One level up, again, same thing. There's no roof over these people's heads. They're just looking out into this huge area. Well, I mean, there's a roof, but it's 6 stories up, and this side it's 10 stories up. And as we go up, what we're looking at is the space the mushrooms stick up into. Here we have a library with a glass window that also looks out into this mushroom farm area. And these bedrooms also get their own personal view of it. The water from the waterfall falls down through a series of grates seen here. And it provides water for a well area, so the dwarves have a safe and contained source of drinking water and cleaning. So that's my process. Design on graph paper, find the right spot, designate the different levels, figure out how to get to it, then start the actual construction process. Now for some background on the Fortress of Swampcavern. This is an interesting place for a number of reasons. Swampcavern is the last fortress of dwarves anywhere in this world. Those dwarves that survive outside of it live in other cities, some even serving in the Goblin Empire that wiped them out. The kings of the dwarves have an almost comical history of being attacked by giant monsters or night creatures. The year Swampcavern was founded, the Dwarven Empire was already dying or dead. I talk about this story in my episode Rise of a Fallen Empire. I'll put a link in the description. Check it out if you'd like to hear how a king who was serving as an administrator for a civilization of goblins managed to get the Fortress of Swampcavern founded as his clever plan to get revenge on the goblins and also escape. Poor guy only partially succeeded. Swampcavern is interesting because of its pets. They have a pet dragon and a pet rock. I use the word pet jokingly because these creatures are extremely dangerous, even to the fort itself. If the dragon ever started using its breath weapon, it could burn down the jungle outside of the fort, or it could even burn down the fort. Swampcavern has a breeding pair of tamed giant cave spiders. It's been using giant cave spiders to defend its entrances. In fact, the fort has so many of them, it's trying to get rid of some. Giant tigers. When I made the fort, the main goal was to get a breeding pair of giant tigers, and I did. Along the way, the dwarves also got a lot of war cats and some giant elephants. If anything, Swampcavern has too many exotic pets right now, and needs to get rid of some. Swampcavern itself is a fort built to repel invaders on the surface. Then it is mainly a 10-story tall fort underground, wrapped around an elaborate tavern area. Here I'm going down. Swampcavern was built not just in a normal biome, but an untamed wilds, or in other words, a savage neutral biome. What this means is it is home to the giant animals, animal people, and some of the crazier cave creatures in the game. The air is often full of hostile insect people. Lizard people come and go wandering the map. A giant honey badger charging the front door of the fort is about a once-a-year occurrence for these guys, which often goes unnoticed by me until after the fact. The fort was lucky enough to be built over a tower of magical metal known as adamantine, so their entire army has super armor and some of the best possible weapons in the game. They've been using it for so many years, some of it is actually starting to wear out. We might have to do something about that at some point. And last, there is the people of Swampcavern. This world is running a bit short on dwarves, so they let quite a few humans into their fort to make up the numbers a bit. They have many legendary dwarves who are legendary for different reasons. They have master artists and crafters. They have legendary weaponsmiths and armorsmiths. They have a well-stocked hospital and extremely experienced staff. They even have a squad of blind siege weapon experts ready to blindly fire their siege weapons if it should ever come to that. Which it probably won't. This fortress has fought the goblins a lot. It is well documented. I recommend any of the Swampcavern siege episodes to see what that looks like, especially the last two. When Swampcavern was built, it was surrounded by goblin pits, with literally hundreds of goblins in each one. The fort has fought them so successfully that those pits are now down to a small fraction of their former selves. Also, half the crazy monsters in the world are now dead. When this world was started, there were around 100. Now there are down to around 50 thanks to this fort. They just don't show up the way they used to. It used to be that Swampcavern could hardly have a change of seasons without a siege or a giant monster attack. Now a year and a half of their time could go by without anything happening, and then, even when it does, it's just a single werebeast or something weak. In theory, one of the big tribes of goblins could hear about Swampcavern's wealth and try and attack, but they'd have to find their way across the map to do it. It's not a long distance, but in my experience in any Dwarf Fortress game, I've never seen them travel very far. If they do show up, I'd be mildly surprised. And pleased. Sieges are probably my favorite part of the game. You can possibly tell by how many siege videos I made. So here goes. One last little comment. Here is Riralath Earbolts, nickname Aquaman. He's the leader of the fort. He spends most of his time in the tavern or in the library, where he enjoys standing at the end of a row of tables and looking important. I'm curious to see what he does next, and as I recall, there was some drama with too many cave spiders in the fort, so let's watch out for that. I'm going to unpause the game and let it run for a while. I want some of the workforce to finish whatever task they were doing before I assign people to the new project. Maybe something interesting will happen when I let it run forward, maybe not. Let's find out. Ooh, this is so exciting. Here we go. Will something exciting happen? How long will we let the game run before starting on the Mushroom Park expansion project? Will tiny snakes on trees cause the dwarves to go crazy? Where was that giant cave spider that just flashed on screen as it walked down the stairs going? Find out next time on the possibly exciting episode of Let's Play Dwarf Fortress, Episode 2. If you like this content, please like, comment, or subscribe. If you'd like to see the next episode, pretty much the only way to do it is to subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified. I'm probably not popular enough to pop up in your feed otherwise. If you'd like to help this channel, tell a friend who would like this sort of video. Or leave a comment letting me know if there's something you'd like to see in this fort, whether it's something you'd like the dwarves to do, or want a better look at some part of the fort. Thanks for watching.